back in March, the Cincinnati Bengals put the franchise tag on star free safety Jessie Bates. And with this, Jessie Bates, if he ends up signing the franchise tag and playing under the tag this season, he is due to make $12.91 million this season. However, according to reports leaked by his camp to USA Today, Bates doesn't plan on attending OTAs or training camp unless he is able to come to terms on a new deal with the Cincinnati Bengals. And there are a lot of ways that this can go. You have three scenarios. The first one being he could sit out this year. The second one being he ends up coming to terms on a new contract, staying with Cincy. And the third scenario being that he gets traded elsewhere before the start of the year. Let's talk about the first one. Will Jessie Bates sit out this year? I highly doubt it. I'm not going to rule it out. But I think most likely he will play this year because it doesn't really benefit him not to play. Because if he sits out, he's going to be losing money. He's going to have to pay fines. On top of that, if he does end up becoming a free agent after the year, teams are going to look at him and be like, okay, you didn't play all the last year, so we don't know how in shape you are. It just doesn't really benefit him not to play, but I'm not going to rule it out. The second scenario, him and Cincinnati come into terms on a long-term deal. From what I've gathered, the yearly salary isn't really an issue. He's probably going to get somewhere between $14.8 million a year and $16 million a year. When you look at the top 5 highest paid safeties and their yearly salaries, Jamal Adams comes in at number 1. He's making $17.6 million a year. Harrison Smith is at number 2 with $6 million. Then you have Justin Simmons, Budda Baker, and Eddie Jackson. Jessie Bates is a top 5 safety in my opinion. So he probably should be getting either $16 million or more. And potentially he could end up earning $18 million a year depending on how negotiation talks go. However, I think that it's more realistic to see him earning between $15 and $16 million and being the second highest paid safety behind Jamal Adams. And the biggest hurdle in this probably isn't the yearly pay, but it's the guaranteed money. Now, you have to know that Jessie Bates' agent is the same agent who represents Deshaun Watson. You remember Deshaun Watson broke the NFL record for most guaranteed money ever. He also represents Jalen Ramsey and Budda Baker as well. Both of those defensive backs got over $30 million in guaranteed money. In Cincinnati, this is an organization that doesn't really give out a lot of guaranteed money. You remember back in 2015, they gave AJ Green $26 million, and then DJ Reader and his deal got $20 million guaranteed. So this isn't a team that has been known for dishing out a lot of guaranteed money, and that's really where I think that the hurdle when it comes to getting this deal done is going to lie. Because for Jessie Bates, is he worth getting 25 mil to 30 million guaranteed? I think so. And for Cincinnati, they're going to have to change that philosophy of not giving out a lot of guaranteed money, because Joe Burrow is going to demand a lot of guaranteed money, and so is Jamar Chase and other star players who they have to re-sign in the next coming years. So if there was a better chance for Cincinnati to abandon their tradition of not dishing out a lot of guaranteed money, this probably would be the ideal time. However, is Jessie Bates the player that Cincinnati is willing to waive their not willingness to give out so much guaranteed money? That's going to be really interesting, because remember, his agent is really good at getting a lot of guaranteed money. So another thing is this: if him and Cincinnati don't come to terms on a long-term deal after the July 15th deadline, which is the last day that teams have to sign their franchise tag players to long-term deals, will Cincinnati look at shopping Jessie Bates? Because even if he plays this year, if he doesn't end up coming back, you don't want to let him walk away for free. the Eagles have been a team that has been heavily linked to Jessie Bates, and they probably will be more than willing to give Jessie Bates anything that he wants. They probably could end up making him the highest paid safety in the league if they really feel like it. So for Jessie Bates, Philadelphia could be an option. There's a lot of teams out there who could need Jessie Bates' services. Then, Cincy, you have a good enough amount of depth to replace Jessie Bates. You recently drafted Daxton Hill in this past year's NFL draft. He probably would be the ideal replacement to end up coming in and replace of Bates if he was to get traded or whatnot. Then you also got to remember, even though Cincinnati does have a good amount of cap space over the next couple of years, there are a lot of key players on this roster that they're going to have to make long-term deals for, such as T. Higgins. You also have Trey Hendrickson, DJ Reader, Chidobe Awuzie, Jonah Williams, Logan Wilson. All of these guys are slated to be in the running for getting new contract extensions over the next year or so, with the guys I just named getting them in 2024. That's when they are slated to be unrestricted free agents. In 2023, you really only have to worry about keeping Eli Apple and safety Von Bell, which Cincinnati probably would allow those guys to walk away. I think they just brought back Eli Apple on a one-year deal because, first of all, he wasn't that bad. He had some good moments. He had some down moments as well, but he was pretty solid for the most part. They're probably going to give him one more year while they allow some of the younger cornerbacks on the roster to develop, and then they'll end up stepping in his place. Same thing with Von Bell. If they end up re-signing Jessie Bates, then Daxton Hill probably could end up filling out at that safety spot. Then you also have rookie safety who you drafted out of Toledo and Tyson Anderson, who I like a lot. But I expect a deal to get done with Jessie Bates. I think he's too good of a player for Cincinnati to not want to re-sign him. And there definitely is interest from both parties on trying to get a long-term deal done. Jessie Bates has already stated that he wants to remain in Cincinnati. It's just that with this contract situation, I really think it's going to come down to getting Cincinnati to waiver on the guaranteed money. This is an organization that doesn't really give out that much in guaranteed money. That's going to have to change, and it's going to change eventually. You just have to wonder if Jessie Bates is going to be that player to bring about that change. There are too many people who think that the reason why the negotiations are kind of at a standstill is because Cincinnati's not willing to open out the pocketbook, and that's not true, because we've seen Cincinnati dish out so much money this past offseason on improving the offensive line. They spent a lot of money the past couple of years on improving the defense. This isn't an organization that's worried about being cheap. They've already proved that narrative wrong over the last couple of years. This really comes down to, are you going to be able to keep Jessie Bates and also be able to re-sign your star players as well? Because for Bengals fans, I'm about to tell you some truth, and you guys aren't going to like it, but not everybody on this team is going to remain a Bengal for their whole entire career. You're going to have guys who are going to be willing to take less to stay on the team and help out others, and you're going to have guys who are simply just going to want to get theirs. Not everybody for the starting core on both sides of the football is going to remain a Bengal. So you have to wonder if Jessie Bates ends up being one of those key players who ends up having to walk out simply for the fact that Cincinnati isn't going to have the funds to be able to pay him and other players. That's another thing that you have to take into account. And then when it comes to him getting traded, what's going to be Jessie Bates' trade value? Because we've seen when Jamal Adams got traded from the Seattle Seahawks, he ended up getting traded for a bunch of first-round selections. So for Cincy, you're probably going to be asking for a first-round pick. Are you going to get a first-round pick? Debatable. Cincinnati, if you do it with Philadelphia, they have a good amount of first-round selections, so you probably could get one out of them, but most likely you could be looking at second-round compensation for Jessie Bates, which Bengals fans probably wouldn't be okay with. They probably would want a first-round pick, but it's kind of difficult to see if you could get one for Jessie Bates, considering the fact that his current situation with his contract and whatnot. But hopefully both sides are able to come to terms on a long-term deal. I strongly doubt that Jessie Bates sits out. I wouldn't be surprised, but I'm 90% sure that he would play this year because it simply doesn't really benefit him not to play. You just lose money and it's not really worth it. If you just go ahead and you play, and as long as you're able to stay healthy, you're probably going to end up, even if you don't get the contract with Cincinnati, you'll end up cashing out elsewhere. However, I understand the risk that comes with playing on the franchise tag because there has been several players throughout the years who've played on the franchise tag, and unfortunately they went down with injuries, and then it affected their contract negotiations. They end up having to get less. It just doesn't really end well sometimes. Hoping that doesn't happen. It's going to be intriguing to see if the Bengals and Jessie Bates can come to terms on a long-term extension before July 15th. But you guys let me know, do you guys think that the Cincinnati Bengals are going to sign Jessie Bates to a long-term extension, or do you think that this may be the last season that we see Jessie Bates suit up in a Cincinnati uniform?